Hi, I'm Doug Badger with Vote Common Good. At Vote Common Good, we encourage people of faith to bring about a change on Election Day by making the common good their voting criteria, and by deepening into faith, hope, and love to stop the re-election of Donald Trump. We've been talking with faith voters all across the country who did vote for Donald Trump in 2016, but won't be voting for him in 2020. Here are a few of their stories. You can hear their entire interviews and share your story at votecommongood.com.
Okay, I'm a 40-year Republican, 1976 to 2016, and I like the Republican values. I guess you could call me a Reagan Republican, and the Republican Party seems to have lost its way. At the time of 2016, it was a really hard choice, and it was, which of the, and we have to get away from Republican and Democrat. Okay, it's not so much Republican and Democrat. It's more what's right and what's not right. Okay, yeah. That's my view now, and it should be. But I took a leap of faith on Trump. A lot of my friends are conservative, and this is the friends I talked to were from upstate New York. They particularly didn't like Clinton. Clinton was our senator for a while. My mom did. Of course, my mom's a Democrat. I was born of Democrats because Democrats support the unions. My father's a blue collar electrician, and that's why the family supported the Democrats. In my views, once I got out into the world, I thought I aligned better with the Republicans, and probably did at that time. Mm-hmm. So it was a tough choice. I took a leap of faith with President Trump and voted for him. Most of that was leaning on my Republican values, and it was kind of a false sale, if you will. It turned out what we got was a lot different than what he was promoting, and it became clear. For example, drain the swamp. It became clear once we got, say, Mnuchin in there, DeVos in there. He's not draining the swamp. He opened the gates for the swamp monsters to come in.
Wow.
Okay, so that. I was disappointed at that time, and I knew it at that point, just days into it, that I made the wrong choice.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. Well, I love to hear that part of people's stories. That for you, it was early on in November or December, or was it after the administration started taking shape?
Once it became clear, and I think it was, as I recall, the Trump administration was in a state of flux until it actually took office. Right. And then, well, it still is, but
yeah, and then it got even more in flux after that, right?
Yeah, right. So once he started getting his cabinet members, I saw who he was choosing, and it wasn't draining the swamp; it was making it worse. So that was a big disappointment.
Some of the questions I'd love to ask you are ones that I personally have interest in, and others are questions that I know other people ask. I see them, watch them, post them online. I hear people talk about them all the time. They ask me, because I talk to faith voters who supported Donald Trump. So some of the questions would be that way. When the campaign was happening in 2016, were you at all shaken from your faith perspective about how you saw Donald Trump comporting himself and heard him the way he talked about women or immigrants or any of that outside of the kind of political side? Because he very much played two roles, one saying some political things about policies, but then there was this other side of his persona and who he was as a leader. Did that other side, the persona side, did that ever give you pause, or was that worrisome to you, or how did you think about that?
There were a few red flags that came up from what he was personally saying himself. And the rest of it, you hear all of the smear that goes on in politics. So I tend to just filter all that out.
Yeah.
So there were a few things that set up some red flags, more so that he was playing himself out to be experts in things that he clearly wasn't. And his persona and stuff, okay, he's a salesman, and I didn't know how bad he really was until it really came out later on. So
yeah,
again, it wasn't really two really good choices to make from. So
Yeah.
it was about 50-50, and I saw I went the wrong way. So
Yeah. And look, there's no shame in answering these questions. They're not meant to be like, how could you have not seen, right? That's not the
yeah.
that's not the intent of any of this. But maybe you want to tell your own story about what you're seeing now versus what you saw back then. At what point
Um,
do you remember? Because if we met in 2018, in October of 2018, had you already sort of moved and shifted your thinking to I'm not going to support this man when the next chance comes around?
well, my let's we'll take it chronologically. So he became president. It was clearly the wrong choice. So I go about my business. I don't watch cable TV news all day long.
Hmm.
If I do, I watch all of the different perspectives to see what just to kind of compare. So I think you know where I'm going with that. So I don't like favor one perspective over the other. Now we all know that Fox News has gone downhill as far as becoming less of a news cable network as opposed to telling people what they want to hear. They're in a business. They're selling. They have to sell something, so they're selling a group of people what they want to hear.
Mm.
Okay, I don't have to watch it unless I'm interested to see what the narrative is. So we make the wrong choice. Then the next thing to do is what do we do about it? Now I'm a forward thinker, not a backward thinker. So think forward, focus forward is what we need to do. So by 2018, I jumped on the bandwagon. I never really actively got involved in politics, but I jumped on the bandwagon with some of the local representative candidates. And as you came through Austin, I was there. I was supporting them. I got to know them.
Yeah.
I did block walking and things I never did before. I contributed as much as I could, and just get the word out. Listen to what's on people's minds and try to throw the perspective out there and give people a good objective view of things as opposed to what you hear on cable news and the social media. So I got really involved. I spent a lot of time. I gave up 6 months of my life doing that. That's how I met you.
Yeah.
So
Was
yeah,
that partly driven out of a new interest, or was it driven out of wanting to do something about your own vote in 2016? Was there a little bit of penance paying in there, or was it just, hey, I've kind of woken up to some new ideas and these seem interesting to me, and I'm going to invest
it
myself?
was it was maybe 20% penance, and the 80% is this is a very serious situation and we need to do something about it.
I see.
The other part of it, I have a millennial in the household just turning about 20 at the time, and she's struggling. We've got to do something. What can we do? What can we do? So part of that was also me learning enough about so I can mentor her
Hmm.
on how to get involved and get engaged.
Yeah, right.
So
Interesting.
those were two things.
Did you talk publicly about your vote for Donald Trump in 2016?
I never spoke in public in a forum about it. I spoke more one-on-one or one-on-few with groups of like-minded people. And I try to give a different perspective to some of the supporters, some of the Trump supporters. I don't know if anyone has the skill sets to do that. So I don't spend a lot of time there. Okay.
Were you a person active in church at the time? Was church part of your life?
I'm not in church. No, no. I was just trying to help the local candidates as much as I could. And I flipped a dozen Republicans to a different point of view. So if one person can do that 12 times, if you get enough people doing it, you can change some minds. And hopefully this kind of thing helps too.
Yeah, no, that's really true. How do you know that happened? Like you were in conversations with people and they told you, hey, I'm not going to support the Republican congressional candidate, or I'm not going to vote for President Trump in 2020. How do you know that change happened?
Block walking and getting to know people,
Hmm.
following up with people.
Yeah.
That the day of the elections as getting them out to vote, and they had indeed changed their mind from the first time I met with them.
Wow. And this is in the 2018 midterm elections, the congressional
Yes,
race.
2018 midterms.
Hmm. Do you plan to do that in 2020?
I don't know. I don't know. The block hockey's kind of out of the question now, at least in the near term. We have to see where that's going to go.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to do. I want to help. This is one way
Yeah.
here. I figure this is, you gave me um, a, a choice here to do this, so
Mhm.
I'll do whatever I can. I'm not a good speaker. I'm very shy. I'm not real social.
Mhm.
But I'll overcome those fears.
Yeah.
And if there's one little nugget of all this that helps, then that's good.
Well, I mean, look, that's a big deal for someone who says I'm not very social and I don't like to speak to others about topics like this. To just delve into talking to people about who they're going to vote for can be like getting right. I mean, you roll religion in there, and you're inside the two most personally held issues. So, John,
Yes.
that's awfully impressive that you're willing to do that and to do this and also to speak with other people.
Yeah, I hope it helps.
So I noticed on the exchange that we were on Facebook, people, we put up a post that said, "Hey, are you someone who voted for Donald Trump and are not planning to in 2020? We'd love to tell your story." And it was just full of maybe 80%, 90% of the posts were people saying things like, well, good luck with that. That doesn't happen. No one's ever going to. No one ever changes their mind. Or what's wrong with those people? Did you notice that in that same thread? And I was interested how that felt to you to hear people sort of kind of just giving up hope that there are people who would have changed their mind from 4 years ago.
I don't know what drives that, if it's frustration or just some people are just, no matter what you try to offer out, will just have a negative
Hmm.
view of things, and you just have to filter that out.
Yeah.
You take the other consideration too, with all the trolling and things that are out there. If anybody speaks up, there's a whole bunch of people ready to just jump all over you, and it's almost scripted. They know exactly what to say.
Yeah.
So I wasn't afraid to throw it out there. I have a lot of Republican friends. Some of them are very staunch Trump supporters too, but they don't. My friends don't attack me. The ones who want to can feel free to. It doesn't bother me any.
Yeah.
So you have to just become. We can't be shy and we can't be intimidated into not
Right.
supporting our beliefs. That's the key.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of bullying that goes on in those forums. A lot of fear. I've probably heard from as many people say, "I'm really nervous about this. I'm not sure I want to do it. Maybe I could write something, or could I do it anonymously, not in a video or format, because I'm really nervous about what that's going to mean." And like they know what happens. They see it unfold, and they're
Mhm.
they're extremely nervous about it. That is
I
helped
mean,
me. Yeah, go ahead.
some people could probably use some lessons on how to overcome fears. I mean, I was trying to find excuses to get out of doing this. I had the sweaty palms and everything, but I got logged in and we're doing it, right?
And we're doing it, yeah. And look, yes, I do think there will be people who will, to borrow a Jesus phrase, who will say all kinds of evil against you. They will, and people will critique you and say things.
Hmm.
But there's also as many people, if a scale sort of works, but maybe even more, who are just going to be so appreciative because it's their own story and they want to hear someone else say it. Or my wife said, "Boy, you're doing a lot of videos these days. What are you doing?" Because I feel like a crazy person. I've basically moved into my basement. I'm a middle-aged man growing a beard, talking on the internet. I look like a man who's lost control of himself, and because I have a quarantine beard thing going. I did hear that Rush Limbaugh is doing the same thing, so that caused me some deep reconsideration of this little facial hair project last night. But
Hmm.
and she said, "Boy, you're doing a lot of videos right now." And I said, "Yeah, there's so many people who are saying I want to tell my story." And she said, "That gives me hope for the first time in a long time, just to know
Good.
that there are people." And if in a small platform like Vote Common Good, which is a lot of people, but it's not 60 million people that voted for Donald Trump or something. If we're finding the numbers of people who are saying, "I voted for him in 2016 and I can't do it in 2020," I think that bodes well for what I hope is the outcome, which is, faith,
Mhm.
hope, and love for a change on Election Day. Do you have a sense of how you think the Trump supporting effort is going? Do you think people are moving away from him? Do you think he's picking up new people who are supporting? Do you have your own sense?
I have a theory of one third, one third, one third. There's one third that don't care what he does. They post memes. We don't care about Trump. We know all of his bad qualities, and we want them anyway. We like them anyway. So there's not even that much point in trying to influence any of them. There's the other one third that will never vote for him no matter what, and then about a third in the middle. So within that third in the middle, there's some that lean more heavily toward Trump and more, and I shouldn't even say Trump. I should say something along. We should say think in terms of the what's right and wrong. So in our view, what's going on right now is very wrong. There are many different layers to that. So if you want to, if the leaning, what do I want to say? About a third of them are never going to change. With a third of them are already not going to vote. So within that other third, there's like a continuum.
Yeah.
And if we can get some of the people, what we're doing here is some of those people that are in the middle that could go either way, and that's a fairly thin band there in that continuum. Just get enough leaning over, and then some of the ones that feel intimidated and are afraid of what what they'll face if the word does get out that they're not going to vote for them.
Yeah.
Then I'm brave enough to go do it anyway. Or the people who are throwing up their hands in the air saying it's no use and I'm just going to let the chips fall where they may. And if you do that, you're really voting for Trump. Okay. So you have to have your vote count. You need to get out and vote and make sure it counts. I mean, your friends will still be your friends, okay, if they're really your friends.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. I have wondered about that though, because I feel like I have lost friendships over people continuing to support Donald Trump. Like I feel myself pulling away from them, and I really think that I was their friend. And I mean, I'm not proud of the fact that there are days where I think I don't even want to interact with that person right now because it just makes me crazy.
It's straining and very exhausting.
So straining, yeah. Yeah,
it is, and what we find. I also worked with the candidate Joseph Kopser. He's now working on another initiative on how to break down the partisanship that's out there, to work together constructively, and basically, if you think about it, most of us, no matter what our views are politically, have an awful lot in common.
Yeah, of course.
We were friends once before. 80% of we have our backgrounds, our kids, and whatever other bonds that we have. We went to school together, whatever it is, they're still there. Common interests and hobbies. And what I do is the Republican Party is really good at deflecting. We use that ourselves and just deflect off on something else. Take us back to another time when we were enjoying our time together, whatever. So get away from the things that divide us and focus more on what we have in common and unite us.
Yeah, it's really such good advice and hard. And maybe it's just because I'm deep in it, both at a personal level and a work life level, and I'm just unnerved by the possibility that some sort of thing that happened in 2016, and I don't know how to explain what it was, but there was a movement of people towards supporting Donald Trump that came between July and November 8th. The numbers, you can see it in the reports of how people said they were going to vote, and something happened. So I've been a deep believer that there's a movable group of people. They move toward Donald Trump. I've been noodling around in lots of the polling because we really care about 5 states first. The first 5 are Florida, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And then Texas and Arizona are sort of our 6 and 7 in the work that we do. And so I've been looking at a lot of the polling, and the number of people who voted for Donald, who made their decision in the last month and the last week before the election, that like 80% of those people went for Donald Trump. So they were waiting and waiting and waiting, and then they picked Trump instead of Clinton. And I mean, it's a big enough number that is the difference in all of those states, right? Which is what the pollsters have been saying all along, like, hey, we never thought that, the swing would be that hard. So I live with these really deep fears that, there's like this swing that happens. And that's partly what we're trying to tap into, because it's my theory that part of what caused that swing was some of the details around Hillary Clinton's campaign and the
Mhm.
reopening of the investigation around her email server and all that. But I also think people really came to believe that Donald Trump would not win, and they thought they could
Yeah.
vote for him without consequence. And then
Well,
somehow they were off the hook for Hillary Clinton's election. And had they known that he really had a chance, I think they wouldn't have voted for him. Now that's a theory, probably without any. I probably couldn't prove it.
mhm.
I don't know what you think about a theory like that, or if there's people or if maybe you were even that way. Like, did you think Donald
Well,
Trump would win? And
there were a certain number of people who fell in that category, and it was right up to the end. I mean, I really struggled myself right
Mhm.
up to the end. I don't know what weighed me, caused me to flip one way or the other. But the other part too is consider what people there. I saw an article somewhere that explained 10 different reasons why people like Donald Trump.
Oh, really? I'd love to see that
It
article.
ranges to a lot of different things, from good down to very bad reasons. But I fell in the pragmatic group there that took, okay, let's give them the benefit of the doubt, which we now know we should never do, and see where this goes. As opposed, some people just have are mean people, or whatever else qualities they see in Donald Trump, and okay, he's my person. Okay, fine, there's your person. You go vote for him. Don't. I'm not going to argue with them.
Yeah.
And then in the middle, I think the key here is to help the people who are being bullied right now.
Hmm.
um, Gin up the fear, gin up ways to overcome the fear,
Yeah.
so that the bullying doesn't impact them so much. And if it's a little harder to engage back, but there are techniques that you can use. Whoever you need to talk to, be it some kind of psychologist, talk to a pastor, talk to whoever can help you through how to deal with these emotions that we feel when people come back at us in the negative way. I think that would help. Help them gin up the courage to get out and vote their mind, vote values. And it's really values. Which values do you want to uphold, right? Look at the values on side A, look at the values on side B. Which values most closely align with you, and vote those values.
Was that how you were thinking about things in 2016? Did you see values in Donald Trump, or is that something you're
Um,
realizing now that values would serve you better than whatever you used in 2016?
the values, there really weren't much in values with either candidate. It's more which is the worst of two evils, and it's
Wow.
really bad. I'm not
Tough fit.
trying. I
Yeah.
don't want to stay away from a good and I like a good and evil discussion.
Yeah.
But which is the worst of two evils, figuratively speaking.
Yeah.
Um, and that was the real struggle, I think.
Yeah. I've heard a couple of things that you've said have been very consistent in the conversations that I've had. It's really intriguing to me how similar they are. One of those was people saying, I really held out hope that how he was as a candidate is not how he was going to be as the president. And when I realized that wasn't the case, that's when it started to sink in that we're really in trouble here. I thought it was bravado and that he would rise up, or he would change, or he was a different person now. And that
Mhm.
8-year-old tape from Access Hollywood, I just thought people change. I want to allow that to happen. Maybe he's a changed man. And so
Mhm.
that's a very consistent narrative. And the second is people feeling like Hillary Clinton was not an option for me, and
Yeah.
I couldn't pick a third party, or I didn't pick a third party, or I didn't just write in, my own write-in candidate. I felt like I had to choose between one or the other because Hillary Clinton. And that's something that I was hearing from a lot of my friends. I was a big Hillary supporter and was
Mhm.
really excited about a woman president, and I was very satisfied with her being that president. Was
I was too. Yeah.
And then I was like, when people would say, there's so many people who just can't vote for Hillary, they will vote for Trump. And my friend Simon was telling me that repeatedly. And for months, and I was totally wrong. I would just say, they won't do that. I'm telling you, like, there's no sense that she could be worse than this guy, And
Mhm.
but I have met many, many people and in many of these interviews that's a very real sense, and I can't fully explain it, and don't try to. But those two things are very common. I couldn't vote for Hillary. I really thought he would change, and I still hear that from Trump supporters now, that they will say, well, Hillary or her server, like they just go right back
the emails,
emails as if we're in the spring and
Benghazi, whatever.
Yeah, like the obsessive nature of, if I stop supporting Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton will become the president. And I just keep saying to people, she's not going to be the president if you don't vote for Donald Trump. Like, you don't have to worry about that anymore.
Focus forward, right?
I have some friends who are convinced that she's actually going to come storming in at the end to become the candidate, but
yeah,
I don't think there's any chance of that. But that's the personal side of all this, which I think you've sort of tapped into as well. So. Well, John, anything else that you think is important in people understanding your story, or the advice you have for people as they move forward in 2020?
Well, it's not so much my story personally, but more, I'm just trying to think of some sayings that Joseph Kopser had. I think what he said, there's more. I know you think about how he put that. We have more in common than that which divides us. That's a good one-liner you can throw out there to help some people, and especially if there's tension, there's going to be tension in any political election.
Right.
Not everybody agrees on what should be, but if you're creating tension with your friends or people you just known for a long time, you want to continue to know. Just focus on what you have in common. Don't worry so much about. Just change the narrative, change the subject of what you're talking about. That just kind of is a nice release valve to release.
That's really good advice. Yeah, I like to say to people, what we have in common? We both suffer under Donald Trump's presidency. See, we share that in common.
Right.
I was just teasing.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, but you don't have to lose your friendships. Maybe some. I don't have any advice on people on how to deal with the bullying that takes place. And so another good point too, as having our perspective, we have to be careful too not to be condescending or put down people who have their views. The best thing to do is just try to understand them and reflect back. Have you thought of it this way? Mm-hmm. And not try to suggest that their line of thinking is right or wrong or good or bad or whatever,
Yeah. And people who voted for Donald Trump do feel morally judged. I've heard that a number of times. People say, I'm not a bad person because I voted for Donald Trump. And you think, well, who told you were a bad person? They're like, well, you and my brother-in-law or my parents or my daughter. It's very common for Trump supporters to feel the pressure, the social and moral pressure. And I think you're right. We really do have to be careful to not sort of have a reverse moral bullying that goes on by basically saying you are a bad person for.
Be careful of that.
Trump. Yeah.
And that goes to, maintaining your relationships too, because as soon as you say something along those lines, it turns, people just turn off just like that. And then you're not communicating anymore. It throws people back on the defensive and then you're fighting. So understand too that people's brains are wired differently. The conservative brain is attuned to fear much more than a more liberal brain. And I won't get too much into that, but there's some good material on that and how to understand it, and why people act the way they do, and react the way they do. I guess we're saying here.
Mm-hmm. Well, John, again, thank you so much, man. It's really great. It's nice to reacquaint, and thanks for doing this.
All right.
Bye-bye.